Welcome back, Descendants. Tonight's story is episode 3 of the stories pinned in the comments below. The Dogman tribe and Bigfoot tribe join forces to take on the Cookways. Another potential ally joins the battle, the Wolfman tribe, if the Dogman and Bigfoot leaders can convince them. Before we continue, press the like button and leave a comment saying Team Werewolf. Time to dive into the unknown. The Dogman people didn't lead us into a village the way our own did. There were no open paths, no comforting circles of light, no voices calling across the night. Their territory felt arranged for silence and control. The shelters set back beneath heavy trees, the fire pits low and shielded, the whole place built to disappear if it needed to. Even the wind sounded different here, as if the forest learned to keep its mouth shut out of respect. We were given space, but not comfort, the kind of space a hunter gives something dangerous when it hasn't decided what it is. Dogmen moved at the edges of our sight, tall shapes threading between trunks, sometimes upright, sometimes low, always quiet, always watching. Their eyes didn't glow with any unnatural light, but they caught moonlight and amber glow in a way that made it impossible to forget they were there. The Bigfoot stayed close to the child, settling near the darkest side of the nearest fire, turning its body so the little one was sheltered from the wind and from any approach. It didn't sleep. It barely blinked. Every few moments, it lifted its head, tasting the air, listening to things we couldn't hear, the posture of a creature that knew safety was temporary. My father and the Dogman leader kept their distance from the fires at first, speaking away from the others where sound wouldn't carry. The man who ruled this place had a calm that didn't feel gentle. It felt trained, like he learned long ago that emotion was something other people offered, not him. He spoke quietly, but the way his people watched him made it clear his voice didn't need to rise to be obeyed. "You brought Bigfoot into my land," he said, eyes narrowing toward the hulking shape by the fire. "And you brought Gugwe scent with you too." My father didn't argue. They were already at our backs. The Dogman leader's jaw tightened. They've been testing our border for weeks, dragging bodies to the edge like they want us to look, like they want us to step out and chase. My father nodded slowly. They did the same to the Bigfoot. The Dogman leader glanced back into the trees, and in that brief turn, my father saw something behind his eyes, not fear, but anger that had been held too long. "We've buried men," he said, voice flat, "and we've lost Dogmen too. Not many, but enough to know this isn't a passing sickness in the forest." My father's grip tightened on his staff. "Then you understand why we came." "I understand you had nowhere else to go," the Dogman leader replied. Then his gaze shifted to the Bigfoot again, and he added, "But understanding doesn't mean trust." My father accepted that without complaint. Trust wasn't something you asked for in a place like this. You earned it in small pieces, with time and scars. They moved closer to the fire after that, not into the warmth, but into the light enough to see faces, to read expressions, to make sure the words being spoken were understood by more than just two men. Hunters from both sides watched, hands resting their weapons, eyes flicking constantly toward the tree line, the sense of threat never leaving the air. My father crouched and drew a rough map in the snow with the butt of his staff, marking ridges, water, old trails, the cave we'd found, the route the Bigfoot had forced us onto. The Dogman leader watched closely, then added his own marks, lines and shapes that meant nothing to us at first, paths that didn't exist on our side of the land, places his people moved that we never knew about. "The Gugwes aren't coming from the west," the Dogman leader said, tapping the edge of the map with 2 fingers. "If they were, we'd have seen their pressure years ago. They don't travel like hungry animals. They travel like an army. They're coming from deeper in." My father traced the eastern side, slow and careful. "You think they have a den? I think they have more than a den," the Dogman leader answered. "I think they have a place they return to, a place they defend, a place they move out from. And if we keep killing the scouts without cutting the root, we'll be standing in snow forever, waiting for the next wave. My father looked over at the Bigfoot again, and the Bigfoot met his eyes, as if it understood the tone of the conversation, even without the words. It shifted slightly, tightening its hold on the giant. We can't fight them in the open, my father said. Not with what we have. The dogman leader gave a small nod. Then we don't fight them in the open. He pointed to the tree line beyond the fire, then to the dark stretch of forest behind it. They're out there right now, he said. Watching, waiting. They think we'll step out like we always do, chasing shadows. My father held his gaze. And we won't. No, the dogman leader said, voice calm in a way that made the statement colder. We'll do what they don't expect. We'll let them believe we're afraid to leave. We'll let them sit in the cold and grow impatient. Then, when they tighten in close enough to taste the smoke, we'll cut into them from both sides. Not to win the war tonight, just to create space. My father nodded. A corridor. A corridor, the dogman leader agreed. Then he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice further, not out of secrecy, but caution, as if even the trees might carry certain memories. After that, we go hunting for the source, not with scouts and guesses, but with a plan that ends this at the root. My father studied him. What's the plan? The dogman leader didn't answer immediately. He stared into the trees for a long moment, then spoke as if the words had been sitting in his throat for days. We need help that changes the balance, he said. Not more spears, not more men who can bleed. Something that makes the Gugwas hesitate. My father's face hardened. There aren't many things that make them hesitate. The dogman leader finally looked back at him, and there was no humor in his eyes when he said it. There's a tribe deeper in the land, he murmured. A people the old stories call the Wolfman tribe. My father didn't move, but he felt the words settle heavy. He'd heard rumors, the kind told around fires and laughed off in daylight. A group that kept to themselves. A group that didn't answer to anyone. A group that only appeared when the moon turned certain ways. He looked over at the Bigfoot again, and for the first time since we'd reached this place, the Bigfoot shifted uneasily. Not at the dogman, not at the hunters, but at that name. The dogman leader watched the reaction and nodded once, as if that alone confirmed something. They're real, he said quietly, and if we can persuade them to stand with us, this war ends differently. The night they stepped too close. The plan didn't need many words. Once it was set, everyone there understood what waiting meant, and what moving too soon would cause. Fires were allowed to burn just enough to be seen, their glow low and shielded. Smoke kept thin and uneven, so it carried like weakness instead of warning. The dogman people moved through their territory with quiet certainty, slipping between trees and rock, as if the land itself opened for them, leaving no tracks where tracks should have been. The Bigfoot remained near the fire, seated with its back against a thick pine, the child wrapped in fur and arm with instinct. Both of them kept visible on purpose. It wasn't bait in the cruel sense, but it was a truth the Gugwas would read clearly. Limited strength, exposed life, a group that looked like it was waiting for morning instead of danger. My father watched the tree line constantly. Every sense stretched thin, every instinct warning him that the forest beyond the light was no longer empty. He could feel the dogmen out there, not as shadows this time, but as presence, positioned wide, high, and low, spread along the edges of their land where the Gugwas had grown bold enough to linger. The dogman leader joined him briefly, crouching at his side without sound. They won't rush, he said quietly. They'll circle first, pressing slow, see if we break. My father nodded. And if they don't, then they'll try to take something, the dogman leader replied. They always do. It didn't take long. A shape moved beyond the trees to the north, large enough to block stars for a moment, then slipped back into shadow. Another answered it from the east, closer this time. Snow disturbed in a way that didn't belong to wind or dew. The Bigfoot lifted its head, nostrils flaring, a low sound rumbling through its chest, not loud enough to challenge, but heavy with warning. The Gugwes didn't care. They stepped closer. One emerged fully into the edge of the firelight, its size made clearer by the contrast, long arms hanging loose, shoulders rolled forward, head tilted as it studied the Bigfoot and the child. Its fur was dark and wet, snow clean in uneven patches, eyes sharp and calculated, rather than wide. Another appeared behind it, then another, not clustered, not careless, but spaced just far enough apart that no single striker could reach them all. My father felt the tension coil tight through his body, the urge to act pressing hard against restraint. He kept his stance relaxed, his hands still, his eyes forward. The Gugwe closest to the fire took another step, then stopped, sniffing the air, its gaze flicking toward the deeper forest where the dogman waited unseen. It knew something was wrong. That hesitation was all it took. A low sound rippled through the trees. Not a howl, not a cry, but a signal carried on breath and muscle. The forest answered it immediately. Dogmen surged from the darkness, not charging straight in, but cutting across angles, dropping from branches, rising from behind the fallen timber, their movements sharp and coordinated. The Gugwes reacted fast, spinning, roaring, claws flashing as they tried to reorient, but the first strike landed before they could pull back. A dogman slammed into one from the side, driving it into the snow with crushing force, while another dragged a second Gugwe backward into shadow, teeth sinking in with brutal precision. The firelight erupted into chaos. My father moved without thinking, shouting orders, hunters spreading out just enough to support without stepping into the dogman's path. Spears flew, not aimed to kill outright, but to disrupt, to break balance, to open space. Bigfoot rose, shifting the child into a safer hold, then charged into the edge of the fight with a roar that shook the air.